All right, good morning. Go ahead and get started. A couple of things just before we get started. A number of people emailed, so we're going to have a smaller crowd today. They couldn't make it due to other engagements. They're going to miss out because for lunch, what we did today is we wanted you guys to see what the kids are eating in the cafeterias. So we are having the boneless wings and the pasta bar that's served over at the high school. The exact same things that the kids get. So that's what we're going to try and do at the SHAC meetings is give you guys exposure to what the kids are eating in the cafeterias. So that's what you'll smell. We'll break at 11:30 because that's when Chef Robert's getting everything prepared for that. All right. Starting with the agenda, the very first item is the discussion on the human sexuality instruction. At the advice from TASB, they advised us to basically put the brakes on all of it, bring it to a halt. There is lack of guidance from TA on what they want, and the districts that are passing it are facing lawsuits and a big mess. So TASB is recommending that we just stop and wait for some further instruction. Ms. Zakura, though, is going to cover what we passed out is some of the teaks for it, and she's going to go over the teaks and what's presented or recommended that's presented at the different grade levels. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Zakura at this time.
Okay. I'm going to cover the pregnancy rates.
The last one, that's the last item on the agenda.
I don't have an agenda yet. Wait, there it is. Okay. Since the state has said some things about putting the brakes on sex education because the state board is having difficulty selecting materials that we can select from because they can't just say one, this is it, because that gives a financial advantage to one publishing company. They've got to give us choices. So there's a little slowdown there, and then some of the other schools are like, well, you know, this is a really hot topic, and some people are going to get really upset because they're going to say, this is the parents' job, school, just stay out of it. And then there's others who are going to say, no, we need the school to do this because parents don't have the right words or the right attitudes or the right phrasing. And so whichever end of this scale you're on, that's your personal business. But I thought it would be good if you knew the foundation of where we are and how all this got started. So I had Patrick print up the health education materials for you, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I just wanted you to look at it. And if you will look at page 1, it says at the topic, it says reproductive and sexual health - healthy relationships. Everybody see that? Okay. You will notice that this is a part of a larger group. Like this is like part 6. So if you wanted to go back and look at the rest of the health curriculum, it's on top of this. Lessons, units or strands 1 through 5, other topics. But this is just the part on reproductive health, because this is the one we're talking about. Now, if you want to go back and look at the whole thing and print it, it's 53 pages. And I think as parents, you may or may not know, anytime you want to see what your child is supposed to be learning, you can look up the TEKS. We call them TEKS. It's Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, because you know we speak in acronyms all the time in education. But you can look it up. But I do caution you about printing, because I know one time somebody said, well, what are 5th graders supposed to know? So I looked it up, and I thought, well, I'll be a good citizen. Let's just print. You know, I don't have time to look through all the screens. Oh, my goodness, I had used a ream of paper. Because not only was it the English language arts reading, writing, but all the things about math, all the things about social studies, all the things about fine arts, all the things about PE. I thought, well, I only wanted to know, you know, like maybe 10 pages worth. So be careful what you ask for and you start printing. But this is 53 pages. But this is only the back part of that longer report. So let's try this out. If you will read with me, the very first one, the topic is types of relationships, including platonic, romantic, and casual.
Mrs. Gore, hang on. If you will hold your paper to where the staples on the bottom left, then you'll be with her, and y'all are lost.
Yep, I'm good now. It's not on the bottom. It's backwards.
It went to a copy machine. That's why they were lost. So we're all together.
Okay, all right. Are we all on the same page now? Yes. Types of relationships.
43.
Yes.
Page 43. Okay. In 4th grade, nothing. In 5th grade, define and distinguish between friendship, infatuation, dating, romantic relationships, and marriage. 5th grade, compare and contrast the difference between friendship, infatuation, dating, romantic relationships, and marriage. And it replaced the part that they have lined out. So this, you're looking at a draft, it's a revision. Then in grades 7 and 8, describe the types of relationships such as platonic, romantic, and casual. Well, didn't that look kind of like the previous grade? So they're still kind of on that same pathway. Then when you get to Health 1, which would be at the high school, and it is an elective, differentiate between types of relationships such as platonic, romantic, and casual. But the comments are interesting because it says, because they've done research on this, infatuation appeared in grade 5 and grades 7 through 8, but not in grade 6, in accordance with the State Board of Education guidance. Work group switched the grade 6 student expectation with the existing student expectation related to infatuation from grade 7 for better, I'm not sure what VA stands for. Anybody know? And age appropriateness between grades 5 and 6 and grades 7 and 8 with high school. So you can see they kind of lined it up. So let's go to the next page. And you will see that they have followed kind of the same pattern. They really get started with a lot of this at grade 6. And then let's look at page 45. The topic is sexual abuse and harassment and dating violence, including rape and incest. The state has really come out strong now on dating violence and preventing it. So in grade 5, a little early to date, but it says, define sexual harassment, abuse, and assault, and sex trafficking. Okay, so there we would be talking about somebody taking advantage of you, right? Okay, grade 6, identify that physical, emotional, and sexual abuse and exploitation are all forms of abuse. Grade 7 and 8, explain that physical, emotional, and sexual abuse and exploitation are all forms of abuse. Health 1, describe the characteristics of sex trafficking such as grooming, controlling behavior, exploitation, force, fraud, and coercion and violence. The penal code definition is not developmentally appropriate. The term sexual abuse is used in the code. That's the Texas Education Code. In multiple student expectations, reordered to begin the list with harassment to improve the progression. The topic of human trafficking includes sex and labor trafficking. However, for the context of this strand, sex trafficking is the appropriate terminology to address. Grade 5 is the appropriate grade level to introduce. Sex trafficking in terminology is used in the Texas Education Code, and it tells you Chapter 28. And you can find the Texas Education Code online or the Texas Education Agency. Added the characteristics of sex trafficking according to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, to Health 1 to separate from the topic of dating violence and student expectation to Health 1, Chapter 23. Identifying the red flags and increasing focus on sex trafficking is important, and instruction on prevention is required curriculum. Questions? Does it all make sense? Okay. If you were to, you're going to be able to take this home, and you can read through it. Just read left to right to see the progression. And I think their notes are interesting because they have spent a lot of time in committees putting all of this together. On page 46, you'll have to put the topics. They started at the top of page 46 with grade 4, and then they didn't put in the other grades. So for your reading purposes, it would be grade 5, grade 6, 7, and 8, and then health 1. And so you can see a lot of it is repeated, and it's repeated for emphasis. And then it gets much more detailed as you go along. STDs and treatment are towards the back. Abstinence from sexual activity, types of contraceptives. But what they want you to know is that abstinence is the way to go. If you don't get involved in sex, if you're not experimenting or participating, then you're not going to get an STD or you're not going to get a pregnancy. Just say no. Well, those of you who work with teenagers know that some of them are not saying no. And so we need to talk with our students all the time about taking care of themselves and being very careful with their relationships. So we are in abstinence state. They've allowed some of this to get through here about contraceptives and so on. So take this home and read it. If you have questions, call a nurse that's an expert, or call Coach Fig, who's an expert. And but we just wanted you to know where all this was coming from as a foundation. And so that means that any of the books that are written or instructional materials that are written have to reference back to this, because this is what the State Board of Education will vote on. So they would reference, okay, this is going to be topic whatever, and they have a number to it so that you can see the progression. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the curriculum or anything? So basically, we're going to put on hold till we get further guidance on how to proceed on it. All right. Our next presentation, our next topic is a presentation on Stop the Bleed. We've asked Nurse Maggie, she's got a video for us, and then she's going to demonstrate the Stop the Bleed. This school year, we no longer have an in-service date or where we can get the training, so we're gearing up. We're going to be replacing all our Stop the Bleed kits this summer. During in-service, when we start up school, we will make sure that all our staff is trained. We may work on training some of our students towards the end of this year in May, but the goal is next year, start with the in-service, get all our staff, teachers trained, and then start working on the student groups to get them trained. We will have all our new kits hanging on the walls, because the ones right now, they're already starting to fall off the walls, and they're starting to be torn apart also. So I'm going to turn it over to Nurse Maggie right now so she can give us a demonstration.
Okay, it's just a 6-minute video on like the steps. There's 3 ways to stop a bleed. One is compression, and then the tourniquet, and then where we actually stuff a wound, which is I'm going to demonstrate to do that. But we're going to watch the video because I don't speak very well in front of a crowd. So if you'll just start it, and then I'll show you what we have available and what we are going to do hopefully next year for the staff, because it kind of got put on hold because of COVID.
I'm Tina Solomon. I am the trauma program manager here at Gwinnett Medical Center. Uncontrolled life-threatening hemorrhage is one of the deaths after traumatic injury. Gwinnett Medical Center is partnering with the National Stop the Bleed campaign to provide training to bystanders on how to control this life-threatening hemorrhage. Everyone should know how to identify life-threatening bleeding and know how to take the appropriate steps to control the bleeding until help arrives. There are a couple of primary principles to controlling life-threatening hemorrhage. First off is to ensure your own safety. It's very important that you make sure you are safe before you render aid to anyone else. The second principle is what we call the ABCs of bleeding. A, alert, you want to call 911. B, bleeding, be able to identify the life-threatening bleeding. And C, compress. And there's 3 ways that you can compress the bleeding, and we're going to go into detail about each one of those. The first principle of the ABC is A, alert. Call 911. It is really important that you get the pre-hospital providers en route to take over care while you render aid. B is bleeding. Being able to identify what is life-threatening bleeding. If you see bleeding spurting from a wound, pouring from a wound, clothes that are soaked in blood, you have bandages that are soaked in blood, if the person is missing all or part of a limb, an arm or a leg, or the person is becoming dizzy or unconscious, those are all signs of life-threatening bleeding. Wounds that can lead to death from bleeding are often located in the arms and legs, torso-junctional, which is the armpits, the groin, or the neck, or the chest and the abdomen, or internal bleeding. Unfortunately, with internal bleeding, bystanders cannot really impact those injuries, and they need quick access to a trauma center. And then C, compress. There are 3 ways to compress. The first is just holding pressure. It is really important that if you have access to gloves, you want to put those on before you render any care. You can protect yourself from bloodborne pathogens. This is an important safety step. So you want to put your gloves on. And then if you have access to gauze, that is great. But if you do not, any clean cloth will work. If you have a clean towel, a t-shirt, whatever you may have handy will work just as well. You want to take the gauze or the clean cloth and fold it and place it directly over the wound. You want to put the heel of one hand on the cloth, the heel of your other hand on top of your first hand, and lean in and put as much pressure on the wound as you can. You want to stay this way until help arrives. Do not peek, you don't want to look, you just want to hold pressure until the pre-hospital personnel can arrive and take over care. The second principle of compress is tourniquets. Tourniquets are used when you have life-threatening bleeding to an arm or a leg. If you have access to a bleeding control kit, they will have tourniquets in them. This is what's known as a cat tourniquet, and is the most common tourniquet that is placed in those kits. It is a Velcro band, so you just want to unfold the band and take the circle and place it on the limb, over the site of the bleeding. It's really important that you go above the wound, and you also want to go above a knee or an elbow. It is okay to put it on top of clothing. Just make sure there's nothing bulky in a pocket like keys or such that would impact the tension that we're going to place on the tourniquet. You want to take the Velcro strap and tighten it down on the limb. It just has to be snug. You are then going to notice there is a rod that is attached to the tourniquet. Once you have the Velcro strap snug on the limb, you want to turn the rod as tight as you can. You're going to twist until you cannot twist anymore, and it is very tight. Once you can no longer tighten the rod, you're going to place it in the C-clip to hold the rod in place. You then can take what's left of the strap, place it on top of the rod through the strap. Many of the tourniquets will have another Velcro strap that you can place over the C-clamp. Tourniquets are very painful, and it's okay to tell the injured person that this is going to hurt. You do not want to loosen it. You want to leave it as is until the pre-hospital providers take over care. They can give the person pain medicine to help with the pain, but it is normal for them to feel significant pain after the tourniquet has been placed. The third principle to compress is wound packing. Again, if you have access to gauze, that is great, but if you do not, any clean cloth t-shirt can be used as well. What we're going to do here is actually insert the gauze or the clean cloth into the wound to stop bleeding. So you want to take the end of the gauze or cloth and actually pack the wound. You want to use your fingers to place the gauze tightly and as deeply into the wound as you possibly can. And you're going to continue to pack until you cannot get any more gauze or cloth into the wound. Once you have packed it as tightly as you can, you then want to compress with pressure. So you want to put what's left of your gauze or t-shirt on top of the wound, apply the heel of your hand, the heel of your other hand on top of that, and lean and apply direct pressure. Again, you do not want to let off of the pressure until the pre-hospital personnel arrive to take over care. Bystanders can make a huge impact with life-threatening bleeding until first responders can arrive. The only thing more tragic than a death is a death that can be prevented. Thank you.
Now, I have this came from the athletic trainer, but they had initially we were going to use pool noodles. And we were going to have the staff watch a video, and then they were going to have to get up and go to each station and get checked off on, like, applying a tourniquet, stuffing the wound, how to compress. Like, it really isn't a very long training. It's very simple, as you can see. I mean, she went over a lot of information. But this is what they have, and I'll show it to you all. Like, this is how we would, excuse me. There's one in here, but I don't want to open it up. But you saw how it is applied. But here's what the school has. And it has, like, the different types of wounds that could possibly be going on, like a bullet wound, a laceration, glass, whatever, or just a projectile object. And what you would do is we would... I know that Mandy had all the students that are in the athletic program, literally they had a race to see who could do it. So you just take it and you would just stuff it and until you can't put any more in there. And I know it's gross, and there is gloves and everything in there. But you know, a lot of times, really, if you're in a crisis, who's going to have time to put on gloves? I mean, but anyway. And then you would just apply pressure. And the thing is to keep pressure on it. Like she said, don't peek at it. You know, you can start hemorrhaging. But this is what the training would be for the staff. And we would, like I said, we would have stations set up for each campus. I don't know how you're going to do that next year. If you're going to have, like, each nurse be responsible on each campus for training her.
To get everybody trained, we were actually going to use all the nurses and then move to each campus because it's going to take
Yes.
quite a bit of staff. So even the athletic trainers will be helping out with it.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they want to order any more of these, but the pool noodle would probably work just as well. And anyway, does anybody have any questions or anything?
The only other thing I would add in the training I took is on the tourniquets, it usually has a tab, and it's important that it comes with a marker that you write down the time that you apply the tourniquet, because it will become critical on saving the limb on the amount of time.
Yes, and she did not bring that up, and that is like, I have several kits made up. They say Kotex shawl are like one of the best types of absorbing material that's out there. A tampon could even be used for a bullet hole, like if you needed to stuff it, and then it has the string, which can be, once they get to the hospital and get aid. But I even have the little Sharpies, like, taped to it. It's like all tourniquets are in it and everything. Like, we would just grab it if we had some big trauma happen, which could be a car wreck, it could be a shooting, it could be anything. It could be like a tornado. I mean, you never know, like, what's going to happen. So we have like 2 or 3 kits set up at the high school that Crystal and I would grab and go, and a Sharpie. And yeah, you need to time it so they'll know how long that the tourniquet has been on the limb.
All right. Any questions?
Good question. They'll start this all next year.
All right. Thank you, Miss Maggie.
You're welcome.
right, the last item on the agenda, there was questions to be brought up at the last meeting, and wanted an update on the mental health and the pregnancy rate. I just passed out the pregnancy rates for the last 3 years in the district, 19, 20, 21. You'll look, when we just pulled this out of PEMS, Jennifer Whitman was able to get this for me. But it shows both the fathers, the males and females. So, of course, the females were the ones that had the baby, and then the males were the father. And we can't correlate if those groups matched or anything like that. This is the only data we can present. And looking at it, our numbers are relatively low, which is what I expected. So in 2019, we had 3 females, one father. 2020, we had 5 females, 1 father. And then 2021, we had 3 females and 2 fathers. And this is the data that we can pull out of PEMS.
Patrick, is that based on snapshot?
I'd have to ask Jennifer. I think it should be for the entire year.
And that's if they're coded. See, now if they're not, if your registrar is not telling but Jennifer works on your campus, I presume when you all have like a pregnant student or a father to be on your campus, that they have to code it a certain way. So I don't know if the registrars know to do that or not. I presume they do.
According to Jennifer, they do. And she said that it was easier, of course, to track the females, but getting the information on the fathers wasn't as easy. So that may not be correct on the fathers.
That's why I was wondering if it was just based on snapshot and, because like, for example, at ACC, we have kids enroll and then they graduate. We're accelerated. So they might graduate before snapshot or after, and so I'd not be included. I would think those numbers would be a little higher, but I'm not sure.
Ms. Vega, I mean, if you're at the high school, do you kind of see those numbers?
I think there's that would be important to note whether it's snapshot, because that's October. And a lot of the year is still to go. But I think the other thing is kids that come in and out of the district without us knowing, especially males, whether they are even going to report it. I think the numbers are higher just because we can't control what they report to us.
Yeah, because I'm thinking just of a list when we were talking about it last meeting, and this year I have 7 girls that came to us that were expecting and 2 gentlemen. So that makes 9. But this is this year. That what you're showing is last year, and like we said.
But if it's any indication of what's happened before, I think there are more. Some of them certainly they face other hardships as well, and then the birth of a child is extreme for them, and maybe we don't see them for a long time, or they move out of the district, withdraw, whatever.
And then COVID going on, they weren't on campus, so they could have been pregnant. We didn't even know it.
Right.
So
I think the numbers are higher, but as we track it, I think it's important for us to look at it every year and then put things in place that
Now,
will
she
service
did
these
say
kids.
we switched over to a different program, to the
And
power school.
those programs are not
And she's
tracking
not,
information well.
yes, she's saying that all the fields, the coding may not be correct, so that's something they'll get it corrected. But as far as getting a report for this year, that's why she couldn't generate it, because it hadn't been corrected yet.
The males are tough. I had a kid come in and tell me that he was a father. Talked to the parents, they were like, no, that's not even true. If they don't have good
Could be a father in another district,
we
too.
don't know.
I have one who's taken on the father position for his now girlfriend. So I don't know how that even factors into, it's not his biological child, but the girl he's apparently with has a child from a previous relationship.
And if they live together, and if they're, that's going to affect him.
Jennifer said they're in total for the year,
Okay,
not based on snapshot.
okay, so total for the year. All right.
Well, economically disadvantaged, what does a 99 mean? That they're not economically disadvantaged? And a 1 means they are? Anybody know the coding?
I meant that. They are, I think they're all, I think that means they are. But I, isn't like most of our kids code just at ACC, I think.
But it's a code, it's not 99 of them are.
No, that's the
it's a
code, that's the code.
But with the systems changing, I don't know what that refers to.
All right, and then are there any other questions on the pregnancies? Well, I'll try and get us data for the last meeting for this school year, even if it's as much as Jennifer can pull out to kind of see where we're at, kind of post-COVID. So before COVID, I was actually surprised our numbers seemed low to us. So we're doing pretty good as a district, and I'll try and get numbers for this year to see where we're at. On the mental health, I was hoping Holly would be here. She couldn't make it to this meeting. We do have our social worker. We hired her in November, and we have her scheduled to come and give a presentation on what she's doing and what she's seen in our campus for the April the 28th meeting. She just started in November. With the Christmas holidays, it was just a couple of days in December. We were out most of January, so she's really busy right now getting set up and helping these kids that need a lot of help. So we will get a presentation on April the 28th from her on the mental health.
Melinda Ortiz, is that who it is?
I believe so. It sounds familiar. Holly said the name and I didn't write it down, and I'm horrible with my name. Remember names. So we will get a presentation from her on the 28th.
She's been assigned to primary and intermediate, but I think there's a need on other campuses as well.
All right.
And she's assigned to those areas because I think this is grant money, and it's just for the younger kids and their families.
All right. Are there any questions or topics for discussion for the next meeting? I'm not going to adjourn the meeting because we've covered the topics, but the food is ready. Chef Robert is ready, so if we can step up this way, line up, and they will start serving the food. And then once we get settled down, then we'll ask if there's any further questions and we'll bring the meeting to a close.
I think, even though you say that they're really, have a sonogram or a due date from a doctor, and then Jennifer said a documentation, and then
delicious. It was very good.
It really was.
No, actually, if you guys come over.
So do y'all send food donations?
We did one day.
You didn't word it very well.
Great day.
I have to go out.
So Crystal Ford, our food service director, Chef Robert, our chef that prepared the meals, the menus. Ms. Garza, at the.
I'm everywhere.
All the campuses. Yep. And then their boss, Rick Nunes.
How you doing?
Thank you, thank
You taste before y'all, but it was after. Anyway, but appreciate y'all. I hope y'all enjoy it. We do have this food in the schools, the high school. They can testify to that.
Very good, very good.
And in the middle school also. So.
And I apologize, I said chicken wings, that's on the next menu. So
Yes.
the 28th.
Okay. Something to look
The
forward to.
boneless chicken wings.
Thank y'all so much.
All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? Not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
You nurses, while you're here, are y'all short on any test kits or anything? We're all good? Shouldn't be as testy as many people? Finally?
I'm good.
Thank you, sir.
Baseball.